Euston was the first mainline railway terminal in London, opening on the 20th of July 1837 by the London and Birmingham Railway. The famous Doric arch once stood proudly in front of the station, with the name Euston inscribed into the stone. However, the arch was demolished in 1961 despite a national outcry. During this time, the station was rebuilt for the commencement of electrified services on the West Coast Main Line, and at the time of filming, the station was once again being rebuilt for the arrival of HS2. Most recently, a mezzanine floor was added with the addition of pubs and restaurants, as well as a brand new set of departure boards in the centre of the concourse. Our train is for Crewe and is now ready for boarding on platform 4, operated by London Northwestern Railway, on board an 8-car class 350 Desiro. The trip to Crewe will encompass most of the West Coast Main Line, travelling at a top speed of 110 miles an hour and at a distance of 158 miles. The signalling to as far as King's Langley is under the control of the Wembley Main Signal Control Centre. The X above the signal head shows we are bound for the underpass route. All routes into and out of Euston are highlighted by a letter, in this case from A to E, plus the X. Pass a London Overground Class 710. Behind the train, the building work is associated with High Speed 2. The proposed line was due to terminate at Euston, but because of high costs, the project has been abandoned and will see this new line now terminate at Old Oak Common in West London. This is the steepest gradient on our entire journey today, as we climb the Camden Bank at 1 in 70 for just over a mile. In the early days, rope haulage was used, attached to stationary steam engines at the top of the bank to assist with the climb. This lasted until 1844. The climb ends just as we cross over the Regent's Canal. To our left are the Camden carriage sidings, while in the distance we can see the Camden Roundhouse, built by the LNWR in 1847 to turn steam locomotives. Today the building is now used as a performing arts venue. The London and Birmingham Railway was opened in 4 stages in the direction we travel in. The first was along here from Euston to Boxmoor, now Hemel Hempstead, on the 20th of July 1837. Primrose Hill Tunnel. The Fast Lines Tunnel was added at the time the line was quadrupled to as far as Bletchley in 1879. The line emerges alongside Southampton Station on the London Overground, whilst at the same time we pass beneath the Chiltern Main Line, the former Great Central Main Line out of Marylebone, dating from 1899. The London Overground runs over the Watford DC line that was constructed by the LNWR between 1912 and 1915 to serve local suburbs between Euston and Watford Junction. In 1922 the line was electrified on the third rail system, hence why today the route has been referred to as the Watford DC line, as the voltage current is rated at 750 volts direct current. Bakerloo line rises out of the tube tunnels to join the DC line at Queen's Park. The station had opened in 1879 at the time of track quadrupling. Platforms only face the slow lines, but they see no train services these days. To our right is Kensal Green, followed by the 317-yard long tunnel of the same name. West London line from Clapham Junction converges from our left, followed by the bridge carrying the North London line, both part of the London Overground network. This area is known as Willesden Junction, and platforms used to be on our line but were closed in 1966. "110-mile-an-hour running now commences, the maximum line speed for non-tilting rolling stock." We pass an Avanti West Coast Class 390 Pendolino. Most long-distance services are operated by these trains, which can tilt and travel at speeds of 125 miles an hour. Pass through Wembley Central, which had opened as Sudbury in 1842. Now the DC and Bakerloo lines appear on our left. The Chiltern Main Line from Marylebone crosses overhead once more. This is North Wembley. South Kenton is the most recent station to open on the DC line in 1933. The bridge carries the 4 tracks of the Metropolitan line, as well as 2 tracks of the Chiltern Railway's branch to Aylesbury. We pass Kenton Station. As we approach Harrow and Wealdstone, the former branch from Stanmore used to converge on our right, and in use from 1890 to 1964. This was the first station out of Euston for nearly 30 years after the line opened, and is also the terminus of the Bakerloo line. Harrow and Wealdstone will always be remembered for the terrible train crash that took place here on the 8th of October 1952. Travelling in foggy weather, the Up Perth Express passed signals at danger and ran into the back of a Tring to Euston commuter service. Shortly afterwards, the wreckage had spewed across the Down Line and a Manchester-bound express crashed into it. The crash was one of the second worst railway disasters in Britain after Quinton's Hill, claiming the lives of 112 people and over 340 injuries. Headstone Lane opened in 1913. The overground provides a 15-minute train service between Euston and Watford Junction. The Bakerloo line was extended along here from Queen's Park to Watford Junction back in 1915, but was cut back to Stonebridge Park in 1982, only for it to be protracted north once more to Harrow and Wealdstone in 1988. Hatch End had mainline platforms here from 1842 to 1963. When opened, the station was called Pinner. However, to avoid confusion with the Metropolitan Railway station of the same name, the station's name was changed to Hatch End in 1956. We've now left Greater London and entered one of the home counties, Hertfordshire. The station at Carpenter's Park had opened in 1914 to serve the nearby golf course. The island platform replaced the original, located 210 metres to the north in 1952. A 5-car Class 377 Electrostar on a southern service passes from Watford Junction to East Croydon. Here at Bushey, the DC lines curve sharply to the left to serve Watford High Street. From there into Watford Junction, the line runs over an earlier railway known as the Watford and Rickmansworth, which had opened in 1862. The Rickmansworth line closed in 1952, but a short branch to Croxley Green lasted way longer than most until 1996, which time the route was totally run down and had only one train a day in the mornings at 7 a.m. As we approach Watford Junction, the DC lines now come alongside to terminate in the 4 bay platforms. The first station, opened in 1837, known as Watford, was located on the north side of the overbridge carrying St Albans Road. The station was relocated in 1858 at the same time as the 6.5 mile branch opened to St Albans Abbey. Managed by London Northwestern Railway, Watford Junction is also the first calling point for Avanti West Coast services, mainly on their London to Birmingham corridor. The fast and slow lines separate as we enter Watford Tunnel at 1 mile and 55 yards in length. recorded for posterity a 10-car Class 221 Super Voyager coming from Blackpool North via the West Midlands. The 20-strong DMU fleet will all be replaced before the end of 2024 with brand new Class 805 bi-mode multiple units. Kings Langley is dwarfed by the overbridge which carries the 8 lanes of the M25. The station dates from 1839 and today is served by half-hourly London Northwestern Railway trains between Euston and Milton Keynes. Signalling has now passed from Wembley to Rugby's rail operating centre. To serve a suburb of Hemel Hempstead, Apsley Station was opened by the LMS in 1938. 24.5 miles from London, we pass through Hemel Hempstead Station, the site of the first northern terminus of the London and Birmingham Railway back on the 20th of July 1837. It had been known as Boxmoor, taking its name from the adjacent village, as the town centre of Hemel Hempstead was located over a mile away. Nonetheless, the station was renamed in 1930, when Hemel Hempstead became a new town after the First World War. For many years as well, the station was the junction with the Nickley Line, a route which passed through Hemel's town centre and joined the Midland Main Line at Harpenden. It was operated by the Midland Railway from the opening in 1877, but oddly enough there was no rail connection with our line. The line closed in 1959. This extension to Tring had opened in the same year, 1837, although a few months later, on October the 16th. As we curve sharply to the left, we pass the old goods shed at Berkhamsted, the original station having opened with the line. The present station, still adorned with much of its LNWR character, opened in 1875. single bores of Northchurch Tunnel are over to our right on the slow lines. Freightliner Class 66 hauls a few cargo containers from Trafford Park in Manchester to Soton Docks at Southampton. Tring station has 5 platforms with little facilities, apart from a ticket office on the road above and a brand new footbridge which has lifts to aid the mobility impaired. Just after the station we entered Tring Cutting, a mammoth undertaking at the time. The cutting is just over 2 miles long and is 12 metres deep in some places. Over 1,000 railway navvies were employed on this section alone. The reason for why the cutting was so deep was because Robert Stevenson, chief engineer of the London and Birmingham Railway, had insisted the cutting would ease the curves and gradients, the latter being maintained at 1 in 330 for most of its length, apart from Camden Bank on the ascent from Euston. Just imagine how difficult it must have been for those early railway navvy pioneers. Dynamite hadn't been invented, so everything had to be dug manually, the spoils being loaded onto horse-drawn wagons. And so we are now on the penultimate part of the London and Birmingham Railway to open. The completion of Tring Cutting meant the railway could open for business to a temporary terminus at Denby Hall, north of Bletchley, on the 9th of April 1838. This is Cheddington. It was originally called Aylesbury Junction. This was because a branch line to Aylesbury High Street diverged to the east and was opened in 1839. The branch closed to passengers in 1953 and to freight traffic in 1963. The station has been known as Cheddington since 1870, unstaffed nowadays but has 2 trains an hour in each direction. On the 8th of August 1963, the Great Train Robbery took place in this very spot. A mail train heading from Glasgow to Euston in the early hours of the morning was brought to a halt by a colour light which had been tampered with to show a red. 15 of these train robbers boarded the train and forced the driver, Jack Mills, to bridge number 127, also known today as Mentmore Bridge or Bridgeoe Bridge. The gang stole over £2.6 million, which is equivalent to £56 million today. Most of the gang was eventually caught for their role in the train robbery and served long terms in prison. Leighton Buzzard, a branch line from Dunstable used to converge from the right. It opened in 1848 and 10 years later it was connected with a Great Northern Railway line from Luton. The line was closed in the 1960s and these days Dunstable is recognised as one of the largest towns in the south of England not to have a railway station. Linslade Tunnel is 272 yards long. The narrow single-bore tunnels were only added in 1876. Quite an unnerving experience for some drivers having to pass through this tight tunnel at 125 miles an hour. Incidentally, Leighton Buzzard is known for its narrow gauge railway system, simply called the Leighton Buzzard Railway, and operates for 3 miles between Pages Park and the Stonehenge Works to the north of the town. The railway, which has a track gauge of 2 feet or 610 millimetres, opened in 1919 and runs for most of the year from March to October, with some specials around Christmas. Now approaching Bletchley. Ahead of us is the newly constructed overbridge that will carry the reopened east-west rail link formerly the Oxford to Cambridge or Varsity Line, from Bicester. One section of the old Varsity Line diverges to the right just before the carriage sidings. It was the first part of the route to open in 1846, running to as far as Bedford, and gradually over time the cross-country route had reached Oxford in 1850 and Cambridge in 1862. Much of the line was truncated in 1967, but as already stated, with the reopening of the section between Bicester and Bletchley, it's hoped for that the whole route may reopen once more all the way to Cambridge, but that is well into the future. The location of Denby Hall Station was just here, the temporary terminus of the London and Birmingham Railway for a few months until the northern part of the route was ready, opening all the way to Birmingham Curzon Street on the 17th of September 1838. Milton Keynes was formally designated as a new town in the mid-1960s, incorporating the towns of Bletchley, Wolverton and Stony Stratford, as well as some small interconnecting villages and hamlets. Despite the size of this town, now a city, Milton Keynes Central Station wasn't open to the public until the 17th of May 1982, officially opened by Charles, the Prince of Wales, now King Charles III. In 2008, the existing station was changed with new platforms. Platform 6 to our left became the new Down Fast Line. The Platform 1 road, which used to be a bay, became the new Up Slow Line. This change meant that today's platforms 2 and 5 are passenger loops and are signalled for bi-directional working. The little-known Bay Platform 2A was also incorporated into the remodelling, but rarely sees any trains these days. Milton Keynes Central is run by London Northwestern Railway, with all their services calling at the station on local services to the north and south. Avanti West Coast calls here too, with destinations to Manchester, Liverpool, Glasgow and Edinburgh. Our next stop is Rugby, 32 miles distance. We rejoin the Down Fast Line. Wolverton was where the London and Birmingham had established their railway workshops, as it's roughly halfway between the two cities. Although at first the works was used for the maintenance and repair of locomotives purchased from outside firms, by 1865 Wolverton was designated as the LNWR's carriage works, eventually becoming the largest carriage works in the country. Much of the works site has today been redeveloped. The western end remains in use by Germany Rail Services. This is the magnificent Wolverton Viaduct, carrying the line over the Great Ouse River, and has been designated as a Grade 2 listed building since 2001. The Victorian-era new towns of Wolverton and New Bradwell were built especially for the employees at the works. Many of the towns were connected by the Wolverton and Newport Pagnell line of 1866 to 1967, and the Wolverton and Stony Stratford tramway, in use between 1887 and 1926. Uniquely, the trams were also hauled by steam locomotives, and the cars they carted were certainly the largest in the UK and possibly the world. The platform remains of Castlethorpe Station, opened between 1882 and 1964. Watford Junction is where we separate from the Northampton loop lines, although all tracks run alongside each other to as far as road cutting. The track classification has now changed from the down fast to the down main. The slow lines are now known as the up and down Northampton lines. Just here was where the Stratford-on-Avon and Midland Junction Railway crossed our line on an overbridge. It was opened in 1891, running from Towcester to Olney, a connection being made from the left just before the old station at Road. The line was felled by the Beeching Axe in 1964. road station was located within the same site, opening with the line. It was then relocated 220 metres south in 1881 with the opening of the Northampton Loop and the widening of road cutting. As you can see, the cutting was a colossal undertaking and wasn't helped with the opening of the Northampton line, especially with the two differing levels and the unusual cage facade, referred to by drivers and guards as the birdcage. Incidentally, train crews who take this faster double-track route away from Northampton refer to it as the old line, whereas the line to Northampton is the new line. Get an advance warning of a temporary speed restriction of 90 miles an hour due to recently ballasted track. The siding and crossover are located at Blisworth. A station was sited here from 1838 to 1960. It was the junction with two branch lines, the earliest being the Northampton and Peterborough Railway of 1845 and the Northampton and Banbury Junction Railway of 1866. Both branches were closed in 1966. However, the section between Peterborough Nene Valley and Yarwell Junction is now under the control of a preserved steam railway society. This overbridge replaced a level crossing here at Banbury Lane. Along this dead straight section of line, two train crashes occurred. The one here took place on the 21st of September 1951, when the Liverpool to London passenger service derailed, killing 15 passengers and injuring 35 more. The accident inquiry found the track to be in good condition, but the loco, which was a Princess-class Stanier Pacific, had an excessively tight bogie axle box after a recent wheelset swap. North of Stow Hill Tunnel was where the other crash took place, the first in fact on the 14th of August 1915. The Birmingham to Euston Express lost a taper pin which detached the coupling rod, striking one of the sleepers and pushing the down line out of alignment. Regrettably, this happened just as the Holyhead Irish mail train was passing, derailing both of the trains and their carriages, with several of them being thrown down an embankment. This time, 10 people died and 21 were seriously injured. We passed through the site of Weedon Station. The station was relocated from its original position in 1888, with the opening of a new branch line to Daventry and Leamington Spa. The line, along with Weedon Station, closed to passengers in 1958 and to freight in 1963. However, a short section of the line at the western end from Watford Junction to Southam remained open for freight trains serving the cement works until 1985. The line now comes alongside the M1, the first long-distance motorway in the country, opening in 1959. Past Watford Gap services before passing over the Grand Union Canal, passing the old goods shed and station at Welton, and underneath the A5, the course of the former Watling Street and part of the London to Holyhead trunk route. Welton had opened with the line as Crewe, but this was changed in 1881, bearing in mind the nearest settlement was the village of Watford. The name of Welton was chosen to avoid confusion with the town in Hertfordshire. The station closed in 1958. We are now approaching Kilsby Tunnel. At 1 mile 662 yards, it's the longest tunnel on the West Coast Main Line, and the main contributor to why Denby Hall in Bletchley was the temporary northern terminus of the line until the tunnel was completed. At the time of opening, it was the longest railway tunnel ever constructed in the world, and has atypically large ventilation shafts because of a lack of experience as to how much ventilation would be needed for steam locomotives to pass through. The tunnel was laid with a single track, but in 1879 a second track was added. With the completion of Kilsby Tunnel, the London and Birmingham Railway was opened throughout, from London Euston to Birmingham Curzon Street, on the 17th of September 1838. Hampton Loop line now rejoins our formation on the approach to Rugby. Watford Junction is the start of the bi-directional movements through Rugby and beyond after the 2008 West Coast Main Line modernisation programme. Our line passed under that of the former Great Central Main Line from Marylebone. The line was closed north of Aylesbury in 1966, but the iron bridge remained in situ until 2006. As part of the modernisation in 2008, the station here at Rugby was extensively remodelled, with new platforms added to our left and our far right, and a new ticket office and entrance building constructed. The Victorian building on the island platform remains, but not so lucky for the large overall roof, which was demolished. An old photograph on platform 2 shows the Rugby bedstead, one of the most impressive signalling gantries in Britain. The signals were installed in 1895, spanning 3 tracks and carried 44 semaphore arms. Every arm was duplicated due to sighting difficulties resulted from the Great Central Railway's so-called birdcage bridge. With the LMS's plan to re-signal the area to colour lights in 1939, the famous signal gantry became redundant. Over time, the structure was dismantled. Today, signalling comes from here at Rugby's Rail Operating Centre. Rugby was once the junction with many other lines, those to Leicester in 1844, to Peterborough in 1850, and to Leamington Spa in 1851. Most of these lines closed in the 1960s, just like the GCR main line, which unusually didn't have any rail connections with the other lines. This is where we leave the formation of the London and Birmingham Railway as it diverges to the left, the upline for which we pass beneath. We are now officially on the Trent Valley Railway, even though the River Trent doesn't flow near us at this point in time, closer to the end of it. Lines from the London and Birmingham and Grand Junction Railway served Birmingham, but it was discovered early on that this would be unworkable and slower to many express services. The Trent Valley Railway was formed in 1845 and the company decided to build from Rugby to Stafford. This 50-mile long line was built in December 1847, giving a more direct route from London to the northwest of England and Scotland, bypassing the existing route via Birmingham. The engineer was once again Robert Stephenson and maintained the gradient to be no steeper than 1 in 330. The line was originally built with double track, but growing traffic meant that several stretches were widened to 4 tracks between 1871 and 1909. Junction before tracks temporarily reduced down to 3. The station at Brinklow was opened here with the line in 1847 under the name of Stretton, before taking its current name in 1870 and closing in 1957. Here we pass beneath the M6. Just after milepost 91 1/4 measured from Euston, we passed the former Shilton station. It also closed in 1957. The bridge carries the M69, the Coventry to Leicester motorway. The large town of Bulkington was rail served, but the earliest of the three to close between Rugby and Nuneaton in 1931. The adjacent town of Bedworth has a station which is much better sited, located within its town centre. Flashing signals indicate that our train will be taking a diverging route. Having travelled nearly 95 miles on the fast lines, from here we turn off it and onto the slow lines at Attleborough South Junction. A 50-mile-per-hour temporary speed restriction has been imposed here due to the condition of the track at the next overbridge. T stands for termination of the temporary speed restriction, and the current line speed of 75 miles an hour can resume. On the approach to Nuneaton, two lines join from both the left and right. The former is the route to Coventry, opened by the LNWR in 1850, and the latter route over to the far right was built to Leicester by the South Leicestershire Railway in 1864. Both routes survive today and have regular passenger services to Coventry, Leamington Spa, Leicester, Cambridge and Stansted Airport. It's a main hotspot for many rail enthusiasts, as Nuneaton is the convergence of many freight routes bounded for various destinations around the UK, such as the port of Felixstowe. The exterior of the station has largely remained the same since opening. Included is the imposing clock tower. For a period between 1924 and 1969, the station was known as Nuneaton Trent Valley, to distinguish it from Nuneaton Abbey Street on the line to Birmingham. The flyover north of the station carries both passenger and freight trains over the West Coast Main Line, thus avoiding conflicting movements with fast express services. The flyover had been out of action since the 1990s, but in 2004, to eliminate the pathing problems over the West Coast Main Line, the tracks were reinstated and two new platforms at Nuneaton, numbered 6 and 7, were added. The cross-country trains have an easy ride coming from Birmingham, trains travelling over the line constructed by the Midland Railway in 1862. This was also the junction with the Ashby and Nuneaton Joint Railway running to Burton-on-Trent and Colville from 1873 to 1964. However, passenger services ended a lot earlier in 1931. There's a difference in speed now, as from Attleborough South to Tamworth, the maximum line speed on the slow lines is 75 miles an hour. passed the 100 mile post measured from Euston. We are now exactly 58 miles from Crewe. Out of all the stations on the Trent Valley Line, Atherstone is the only station that does not provide any rail connections with any other lines. The station is located northwest of the town centre and has a population of just over 11,000. Standing as good as the day it was built, the original station building on the up platform has been granted as a Grade 2 listed building after the locals protested to stop the building from being demolished. Leaving Atherstone, we pass under the A5. In the early years of the railway, there was a fatal train crash at Atherstone, taking place on the 16th of November 1860. A special cattle train from Holyhead to London was shunting just south of the station to let the Scotch mail train pass. Sadly, the mail train was not aware of the movements going on ahead of them, and the driver claimed they had not seen the advance signal at all approaching Atherstone. By the time he saw the red signal before the station, he immediately applied the brakes, but it was too late and the train slammed into the back of the cattle train, killing 9 Irish drovers who were asleep in the brake van and the fireman of the mail train. 29 of the cattle were killed, or many of them had to be slaughtered because of their injuries. The inquiry criticised the decision to allow the cattle train to leave Tamworth before the mail train without allowing sufficient time to clear the line, and the failure to warn the mail train driver of the train ahead of them. A further recommendation was that in future in cattle trains, drover vans be placed in front of the cattle trucks instead of behind them. This viaduct takes us over the River Anker. Past the only surviving platform at Polesworth. The up platform is no longer in use with the removal of the footbridge in 2005. The station is only served by one passenger service a day, this being the 0648 from Northampton to Crewe. This train is known as a parliamentary service, a term that now describes train services that continue to run to avoid the cost of formal closure of a route or station, but with a reduced service. Such services are often called ghost services. This is Amington Junction. Fast Avanti services in the peaks that need to call at Tamworth branch off the fast line here. Tamworth Low Level was opened here in 1847, the upper level opening first in 1839 by the Birmingham and Derby Junction Railway. These platforms, numbered 3 and 4, are used exclusively by cross-country trains on their core main line from the southwest to the northeast and Scotland. Historically, there were connecting cords connecting the two lines, but in 1969 these were removed. north of Tamworth, the line was of a double-track nature, but in 2008, with the increased capacity scheme on the WCML, the 11-mile section to Armitage was quadrupled. This benefited a lot for the Class 390 Pendolinos, as the double-track section was inadequate for them running behind slower local services. All four lines have a maximum line speed of 125 miles an hour for tilting trains and 110 for non-tilting trains. Brand new Class 805 Evero overtakes us on the down Trent Valley Fast. The brand new trains entered service in June 2024 and today operate on services to Chester, Holyhead, Birmingham and Wolverhampton. Eventually the trains will operate all the way to Liverpool, but that is well into the future. The line crosses the River Tame. Here we pass under the A38. Once again, the station here at Lichfield Trent Valley is on two levels. The high level platform is the terminus of Birmingham's Cross City Line from Bromsgrove and Redditch, using two 3-car Class 730 EMUs. The line had originally been built by the South Staffordshire Railway in 1849, connecting Dudley and Burton-on-Trent. The line still continues to the latter unelectrified, connecting with the former Birmingham and Derby Junction Railway at Watford Junction. Fast lines are no longer signalled for bi-directional operation, as that ended at Crewe Junction. There was a station here at Armitage. It had opened with the line in 1847 and closed in 1960. We are now in the valley of the River Trent and cross it for the first time just here. As we slow for Rugeley Trent Valley, the line from Walsall converges on our left, now operating with a half-hourly service from Birmingham International. The line opened in 1859 by the Cannock Mineral Railway, but soon became a part of the LNWR a few years later. Passenger services were withdrawn over the line in 1965, but reinstated in 1989, and more recently, the route has benefited from electrification in 2018, completing the 15-mile missing link between here and Walsall. Today's station is unstaffed, and the short platforms can only accommodate a train of 4 coaches, so the guard needs to lock out the rear 4 coaches of the train by turning the unit deselect switch. Tracks come to an end here at College Junction. The route towards Stoke-on-Trent, Macclesfield and Manchester bears off to the north. A station was located here until 1958. Cross the Trent for the final time and immediately are in the grounds of Shugborough Hall, now in the hands of the National Trust. The elegant tunnel entrance to Shugborough Tunnel, 777 yards in length. The tunnel entrances, with notable ornamental brickwork dating from 1847, have been granted Grade 2 listing. This was the location of Milford and Brockton, opening in 1877 and closing in 1950. tracks resume again with a new layout. The slow lines are now on the left-hand side and will remain so all the way to Crewe. Here the line crosses the River Penk, a tributary of the Sow. The line now curves to the north, joining the path of the former Grand Junction Railway from Birmingham, of which we took this route back in 2021 with our Grand Junction driver's eye view. Stafford is our last calling point and is the county town of Staffordshire.
London Northwestern Railway service to via
The station was relocated from its former position in 1844, and in 1862 and 1962 the station was rebuilt and now looks rather unadorned. Currently the station has many facilities which are typical of those across the Avanti West Coast network, such as a ticket office, toilet, car park, coffee shop and newsagent.
Passengers for Penkridge and Milton Keynes should board the front 4 coaches. This train is formed of 8 coaches. Platform 1 for the 1639 London Northwestern Railway service to Rugeley via Penkridge.
Stafford also was the junction with 2 other lines that have now been closed, the Euston line of 1867 to 1965 and the Shropshire Union Railway and Canal Company from 1849 to 1969. M6 passes over us again. The 24-mile dash between Stafford and Crewe now have no stations opened. Great Bridgeford was one such example. Opening with the line in 1837, it closed in 1840. The station reopened in 1876 with the prefix Great and closed for good in 1959. We can now see Little Bridgeford Junction, which takes away the down slow line and the up Stoke. Initially, trains bounded for the Stoke-on-Trent line used to leave the WCML on the level at Norton Bridge. As you can imagine, this caused a lot of problems, affecting express services. The solution was to build a flyover that avoids the flat junction, hence why the double-track line diverges away from us to form a large loop, allowing trains to traverse the flyover at 100 miles an hour. The new line opened in 2016, but the flat junction at Norton Bridge is still in situ and is now used occasionally. The station at Norton Bridge had been opened on the Grand Junction Railway back in 1837, but closed to passengers in 2004 when the service was replaced by buses. It's unusual to think that the platforms remained opened with no scheduled services for 13 years, before finally being closed for good in 2017. The 2016 flyover now crosses us here. The sharp bend around Norton Bridge required a slight speed reduction of 105 miles an hour, but now after the bridge we can get back to full line speed once more. The down slow line rejoins. The slow lines have a maximum speed limit of 100 miles an hour. Passing us here is a brand new train, a London Northwestern Railway's Class 730 Adventurers, out on mileage testing currently before entering service with the company and operating over the Trent Valley Line between London and Crewe and also between London and Birmingham. Fast and slow lines separate as we pass the former station of Stanton Bridge, a 1952 closure. The station was not far away from the Mill Meath pumping station, which which our train passed prior to the closed station. It was an early 20th century steam-powered water pumping station, built by the Staffordshire Posturies Waterworks Company, and between 1926 and 1927, parts were delivered to Standon Bridge during the installation of a second steam engine. In the far distance we can see Hatton Manor, another former Victorian pumping station. This one survives today as a Grade 2 listed building and converted into private homes. Situated in the village of Baldwin's Gate was Whitmore Station, the village of that name being 1.5 miles to the east on the A53. Yet again it closed on the same day as Standon Bridge and Madeley on the 4th of February 1952. This overbridge once carried a former railway line, with a connecting line that used to join the main line on the left where Watford Junction is located today. This was the Stoke to Market Drayton line, built by the North Staffordshire Railway Company in 1870, with at least 13 trains daily over the route, majority of which terminated at Silverdale. After the Second World War, the passenger numbers dropped, and for that case so did the rail services to just 2 trains a day. In hindsight, closure was an inevitability. The last train ran in 1964, a casualty of the Beeching Acts. Road was open for 70 years from 1875. This is Basford Hall Junction, which leads to Basford Hall Goods Yard, covering an area of 0.83 miles or 1.5 kilometres, and dates from 1901. Initially used to marshal trains, the site now acts as a hub mainly for Freightliner intermodal trains, but also houses departmental sidings for track engineering works by Freightliner Heavy Haul and for other operators. For a period in the 1930s, Basford Hall was the busiest marshalling yard in Europe, handling between 28,000 and 47,000 wagons every week. We pass the Arriva Train Care Maintenance Depot at Crewe that is used to store a number of different types of rolling stock, one of which is for London Northwestern Railway's 350 fleet. This is Crewe South Junction, which brings in the lines from Stoke-on-Trent on the right and Shrewsbury on the left. So, after travelling 158 miles in a time of 2 hours and 8 minutes, our Class 350 Desiro EMU arrives in Bay Platform 7. The train will return to London in 20 minutes' time.